Hello everyone, I'm Rizwan, and today I'm going to be reviewing one of my favorite films of all time, The Godfather. I was originally thinking about reviewing The Godfather Part 2, but I would like to get my thoughts out on the first film first, just to have a sequence. So, yeah, here are my thoughts. So, this film came out in 1972, based on the best-selling novel by Mario Puzo, and it's directed by the now very infamous Francis Ford Coppola. So, this was a film that was made at a time when Francis Ford Coppola was relatively an unknown director. Like, I think he did make some studio films here and there, but they were not very popular. And this Godfather film was his big break. And it was a film that he really did not want to make. And hearing his interviews, uh, seeing what kind of films he made after this film, I could really see why he did not want to make it. I think this kind of studio system, like he did not want to be part of it. He's the kind of guy who really thinks big and tries to go really big and really do things himself. So he's a visionary in that sense, and he's also a guy who really likes to take risks. Uh, Even in the studio system, like with this film, I think he took a lot of risks, and I read about the trivia's and stuff a long time ago, and there's so many interesting trivia's. But I'll just get into the film first, and then I'll discuss more thoughts on that. So this film is about a family called the Corleone family. They are a crime family. They do a lot of like criminal activities like gambling, prostitution, and stuff like that, but they do not do drug related stuff. They don't like to handle drugs. So that is like their kind of thing where they don't want to do it. And when this guy called um, this I think this Italian guy comes in, and he says that, oh, like the whole family, everyone is Italian, but this other Italian guy comes in and he says, I actually want to work with you, I want to do business with you, but I want it to be heroin. And the Don Corleone, played by Marlon Brando, he says that he doesn't want to do it. So because of that, this guy goes and kills Don Corleone. It's an attempted murder. So the family right now, they're like, okay, what do we do? What do we do? Should we go into drugs now? Like, should we go against our values? And the youngest son, Michael, played by Al Pacino, he comes in and he's like the black sheep of the family because he's not part of the crime business. He's like, you know what? We should fight against this guy. We should kill him. He's gonna try to kill us again, and he's gonna make us follow his rules. We can't just allow that. Especially after trying to assassinate the Don, our father. So he's like, we should take revenge against this guy, and but the side result is that if they kill this guy, this drug dealer, then the people who support him in the other crime families, they would back him and try to. They will start a gang war essentially, and that's pretty much what this movie is about. Like how they deal with this kind of like thing, this gang war, and whether Marlon Brando's character he comes back and what does he do, and what does Michael do, this youngest son, um, and what comes of the family. These are all, in general, what happens in the movie. There's, of course, a lot more things that happen, a lot more things that go on, but essentially, this is what the story is. It's about what what this family does after this kind of like event that happened, and what the youngest son does, like how does he take over the family in the end, and what are his values, what are his rules, things like that. So this is essentially what the movie is about. And so one of the things that was very interesting to me with this movie is that when you compare a lot of movies nowadays, where movies are blockbusters, they have a certain formula, they have a certain type of pacing that is, it's very fast paced, there's a lot of action sequences. But The Godfather is not really like that. There are spectacles, there are scenes that are very grand, but it's not in the sense of like action packed type of grandness. There are a few action scenes here and there, but I don't think those are the highlights of this movie. And even the action sequences, it's like, yeah, it's not the type of things that you see in today's films. Like even the films that are like crime related films, gangster films, the types of films that you see nowadays, crime related films, when you see The Godfather, it's like super tame. Like The Godfather is very tame. It's a much more quieter film. It's much more slow paced. They really take their time to get the audience involved into the story. Even the first like 40-45 minutes is just a wedding sequence of the family, right? And we see all the characters being introduced slowly, and we see the the like problems that are there, but it's not fully realized. We are only going to get to it later on. So these kinds of things are, there's a lot of build up to it, and in that sense it feels very much like a novel. And of course this movie is based on a novel, so I think those kinds of novelistic things really translate into this film. And also this movie is 3 hours long, so there's a lot of story to cover. There's a lot of um, things that you could show, as opposed to a movie nowadays where the best you could get is like 2 hours 30 minutes. Even if it's a very big crime film, then you cannot go for a very long runtime, and you cannot really do a film where it's very performance based and um, very quiet. So that those are things that were very interesting to see in this film. um, and this movie was a very big success when it came out as well. So you could see the audience's taste back then, the way it was. I'm not sure if this movie, if it comes out today, if it's gonna be a big hit. Um, like I just don't see this kind of movie becoming a big hit today, even if it gets good reviews. Because the types of films that we consume nowadays is it's entirely different. And the further thoughts on the film, I think the one of the key things that people always talk about with The Godfather is Marlon Brando's acting. I think it's amazing. Um, it's definitely one of the most iconic performances ever. And when you see the film, every scene he's in, even though he's not in every scene, I think he's only there for like 1 hour of the movie, because like a large part of the movie he's bedridden, and we see more of the younger son, Michael, who's Al Pacino. We see more of Al Pacino more than Marlon Brando. But anyways, whenever Marlon Brando is on screen, he has such a conviction. We really believe that this guy is the Don. Like there's no other way to look at it. He is the Don. He is the gangster. He is a guy who, even though he probably did a lot of crazy stuff, like a lot of murders and killings back in the day, right now he's sitting as a Don. He's this very mellow, very very calculated guy who is who gives orders, who's very smart, who's very loving. So those are all things that are very it conveys so much in the way he performs the role. And even his voice modulation is, it's just iconic. It's amazing. Um, and then getting to all the other actors, I think, like James Caan, who plays Sonny, the very angry, hot-headed son who tries to take over the business, but he's also like, he's really volatile, and because of that volatility, there's like problems in the family, problems with other families because he's trying to kill the other family members. He's not calculative as the Don. So those kinds of character dynamics are also seen so much, and we also see the results of that kind of like behavior. And we also have Fredo, who is the second oldest son of the Don. He's played by the really wonderful, amazing late John Cazale, who passed away way too soon. He's one of the best actors ever, who ever lived. Like when you watch this movie, and the Dog Day Afternoon, Deer Hunter, and of course The Godfather Part Two, amazing performance, amazing role. Like you could not imagine anyone in that role. I think in this movie he doesn't have as much of a role to play, but in the second movie, oh man, like it's amazing, wonderful performance. Um, and then of course you got Al Pacino, who has this very very quiet, understated performance at the start of the movie. I think it's, even though it's very understated, it's very important. It shows his character that he's not a guy who emotes a lot. He's in the war, he was in the army, and he also doesn't want to associate with his family, this criminal enterprise, right? He wants to be more of a American. That's why he joined the American army. He wants to, have this American life and live this American dream. So that kind of thing is shown, and that is why he doesn't emote a lot at the start of the movie when he's with in these family gatherings. He's like, he doesn't really want to be part of it. And then as the movie goes on, we really see the emotions in him. We really see what he cares about. We see the anger, the this really scary sense of like, this guy's a very cold guy. If you cross him, if you cross his family, he's gonna kill you for sure. Like that kind of anger, that kind of calculated expression. When you get to the last parts of the movie, like when you get to the scene with the when he's saying, "Oh, don't think I'm an idiot," don't tell me you're innocent, and this amazing film noir lighting that is present in his eyes, like just a part of his eyes is lit, and then he's saying like, "Don't tell me you're innocent," and it's so scary, like the way we saw him at the start to how we see him now, it's like amazing performance. That's just, you gotta watch the movie if you haven't. I think those are kind of the things that really make it an unforgettable movie. Another thing that I really liked is um, the way the story is constructed is not in a way that it's like about good guys versus bad guys. Instead, it's more about the family dynamics within the family. So when you look at other gangster movies, like even The Departed, right? It's about cops and criminals, and the whole movie is about this cat and mouse game between them, and the informant between like these both sides, and how they try to chase for the information. This kind of cat and mouse game. And here we are pretty much solely focusing on this one family and what they're doing. The main villain of the movie, the Barzini, he's not even in this movie for most of the movie. Like he's only in like a few scenes. And also the other five families that are there, like Tatalia, um, the all those families, right? They're not there like villains throughout the movie as with other gangster films and other types of films. So that's also something that was very interesting. Like when you, yeah, in other gangster movies, it's not like that. So the way they approach the story here, with solely focusing on the family, the Corleone family and their dynamics, their sort of decisions, what results from those decisions. It gives that feeling of, okay, this is not just a gangster movie. This is a family drama. This is an epic drama about this American family who is Italian, who's also a criminal enterprise, right? Right, and yeah, those kinds of things were very interesting, and it also makes it very timeless. I think um, you could not be a guy who likes gangster movies, and then you can watch this and feel like, oh, okay, this is not just a gangster movie. This is a movie about just any family. You could replace the gangster elements with like about a story about kings and queens, a story about a business, and it would fit. And that is why these kinds of stories keep getting retold and retold. Like in this movie, it's about this gangster family, and then later on, there were movies made where they replace this kind of gangster family with the family in a village, uh, um, a business magnate family, um, like the Bollywood example, like Animal, right? That was their recent movie that kind of tried tried its best to make a movie like The Godfather, but I think they didn't really do the best job. But these kind of stories are still so relevant and powerful, I think, and I really like the dynamic of this rise and fall of a family, how the older generation, they build up the family, and then when new generations come in, there's new challenges, new businesses, new values that try to get in, and when the older generation opposes it, then they get fired, they get into a lot of trouble and difficulties, and when they do, the younger generation are not really able to handle it either, and they sort of make decisions on their own like understanding, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and um, there's new rules happening each time, every time. Like in this movie, we show that um, this family doesn't want to deal with drugs, but because of them opposing it, they get into the problem of this whole gang war that starts, and these they it really starts showing the cracks in the family as well, with Sunny, this character being this very um, angry young guy, and we see the result of that, and then we see the youngest son, who is Michael, who has to take over the family in the end, because he's the only one who is smart enough to do it, and he's the one who is most um, he's the only one who is able to make this immigrant originally immigrant family go legit, which is their dream. They want to make this crime empire go legit, right? So the all this things are entrusted upon him. So, and then we see the result of that as well, that this guy, he didn't want to live this life. He wanted to try his best to escape this kind of criminal enterprise, this culture where crime was such an important factor, and he realized he couldn't. And one of the reasons he realized he couldn't was the fact that we see earlier on, we see the police, the corrupt police in the movie, who beats him up, and then we see the system, the whole system that is built against him. He realizes that he has to become a gangster to survive. He has to be a criminal, and he has to be powerful. He has to be cunning. He has to be a cold-hearted guy who exerts power so that he can stay in power, so that his family is protected. And I think that is also quite relatable to a lot of people. Like a lot of us, we don't really want to do certain things, but because of our families and our like friends or whatever it is, like who we care about, we have to exert that power so that, you know, we don't get screwed over. We don't have to deal with that kind of like um, people just taking advantage of us. And I think the way that Francis Ford Coppola made this movie, the reason he chose to make this movie, and now I'll get to do more of the trivia section that I read about this movie, is that he wanted to tell the story about the way capitalism works, the way businesses and monopolies, enterprises, they are so intent on profit. So at the very end, the person who stands is the person who shows the most amount of power, like someone who just um, exerts a lot of power and defeats everyone, and then in the end, he can stand above and be like, "Yeah, I'm the winner now. I have the power. I could protect my family, and nobody can do anything against me or my family." So that is kind of what the movie is trying to show, and they also show that in a way in this setting of this movie it's necessary. Like Michael had to do it. He had to exert that kind of power, and the system is also like that, as I said before. And yeah, this is Coppola's commentary on capitalism. As you know, he also made the anti-war film Apocalypse Now. So that movie was also against capitalism. That movie was about the horrors of Vietnam War. Um, so Vietnam War, as you know, the U.S. was the capitalist country that fought against the communist um, guerrilla um, faction in Vietnam. So he really is this very liberal, anti-capitalist guy. Um, and yeah, the funny thing is he later on he made a lot of money through his winery and stuff, and he became an elite. Um, but I think the point that the thing that was shown in this movie still stands. Um, and I think we shouldn't just dismiss the the person for the art they made. And also, I think it's important to consider that this movie was made before Coppola was this ultra rich guy. This was when he was like in his early 30s, and he wasn't a big director, and he had to take this job. And I can really see the passion in it. Even though he doesn't like the movie, he doesn't want to make the movie, he really infused his passion in it. He really made it his own story. He really infused his own elements, what he wanted to show, what he wanted to say. He took big risks with casting Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, the actors that are two of the actors that are the best aspects of this movie. He originally the studios didn't want him to cast them, which is crazy, right? But you know, in the end, he took that risk and it paid off. Um, and then another thing that I would just like to get across is the other actors that are in this movie, like Clemenza, who is like the bodyguard. Sorry, not the bodyguard, but like the associate of the Corleone family, and also Tessio. So these guys were also very amazingly casted. I think once you see them, almost every character, you couldn't imagine any other actor playing it. Like Tessio, Clemenza, Tom Hagen is a big one. He's the consigliere in um, of the family. He's this he's the advisor to the family in the legal side, and he's not an Italian, but he kind of got adopted into the family because he was found by Sonny a long time ago. So I think that character, the way he played was also very beautiful. I think it was really amazingly done. Um, yeah, this movie has just such an amazing casting. Um, and then I really want to talk about another aspect of this movie. There's a sequence in this movie where Michael goes to Italy, which I heard that some people found it really boring. They didn't like it, but I was like, man, this is like one of the best parts of the movie because it you have this American setting, right? Where the whole story, most of the story takes place in America, and then you have this guy who wants to be American, but he's forced to go to Italy, and then he goes back to his roots. It's such a beautiful sequence, right? He goes back to his roots. He goes to the village. He sees this woman. He's like, he's living in this. Um, like the reason why Michael came to Italy is because he killed someone, and he wants to not get caught up into that, right? He wants to stay away so that he himself doesn't get killed in the gang war that he started, right? So he's in Italy. He meets this woman, and he marries her, and he really falls in love with the country and the city. So that whole sequence, I think it was so interestingly and beautifully constructed. It really solidifies this movie as an epic film, I think. Um, and it really shows the character of Michael as well, like the character growth, and that he has to escape something, and then he gets something so beautiful, and then he, spoiler alert, he loses it, and he has to come back to the city um, as this guy who needs to take control of the family. So we really see a lot of character and a lot of emotion in there, I think. And as someone who is a third culture kid, I also felt a lot of resonance in that. And that I'm an Indian guy. I live in Hong Kong, and if I go back to India, I do feel that sense of belonging. But since I'm living most of my life in Hong Kong, I feel like I don't really belong here, even if I try. If I try to do all these things, I always feel like an outsider. So when I go back to India, I feel like I'm at home finally. But always I have to come back and deal with all the stuff over here, and I have to take charge of this and that. So for me, when I watch the movie, every time I feel so connected, and a lot of things in the movie, I also have a lot of personal reasons why I liked the movie a lot, and I really resonated with the movie. To anyone who had a conservative family growing up, and you also had a large family with a lot of different people, or a large extended family, you would understand a lot of things more when you watch a movie like The Godfather. I think you really have to have lived in that kind of household to have experienced those kinds of family dynamics and a lot of these family problems and events, so many different things to really understand and like this movie. Like, yes, I myself have seen a character like Sonny. I have seen a character like Connie and Connie's husband in the movie. Sorry. I have seen Michael. I have seen Don Corleone. I've seen people like Clemenza. I've seen Tessio. I've seen all these people, all right? Not as gangsters, but as relatives, family members. These are all characters that are relatable to me as a guy who grew up in that kind of environment, in that conservative household. Even though this movie is about Italians, it could relate to other cultures as well, like Indian culture, um, Chinese culture, any culture that has these kind of strong family bonds and dynamics and large extended families. Yeah, there's bound to be so many things that you could relate to the movie when you see it, right? So I think those are all things that really made me really connect to this movie when I watched it when I was younger, when I was I think 13 years old, I watched it for the first time. When I watched it for the first time, I didn't really understand the full story of it because the movie was in English and there were a few accents that I didn't really understand at that time. Um, and there was a part in Italy that when I watched it for the first time, I didn't have the subtitles, so I didn't understand that part. And then it took multiple viewings later on as time went on with better sound systems, with subtitles, and then I understood, oh, okay, this is what the story is about, this is what's happening. But even in the first time I watched it, I was so connected to the movie. So that really shows the power of cinema, of visual storytelling, of character, of culture that transcends language, that transcends some certain story beats and understandings. So I think that's really the power of cinema. Like if you make a really, really good movie, even if the audience doesn't fully understand the story, they're gonna connect to it. They're gonna love it. They're gonna treat it as their own movie, as their own story. So I think that's the beauty and power of cinema and art. And I really hope to one day make a movie that's as powerful and resonant and rich, culturally rich and emotionally rich as The Godfather. Yeah, I think this is one of the greatest films ever made. This is one of the greatest achievements in filmmaking. This movie has some of the best cinematography. This movie has some of the best editing. It doesn't have any very showy cinematography anywhere. It's very the way it's shot is very simple on the outlook, but when you look into it, there's a lot of thought put into a lot of the shots, a lot of tripod shots and dolly shots that seem very simple, but there's a lot of thought put into it, and the way it's edited is also it flows so beautifully. Yeah, even when the movie's slow paced, it's always conveying the story, conveying the sense of time, the passage of time um, over a course of 10 years. 10 years of time from 1945 to 1955, all compressed into this 3 hour film. Just imagine that, how amazing that is, how beautiful that is, that a whole life of two generations of people get condensed into just 3 hours of film. So that is also the power of cinema, right? You could show such a massive length of time in just 3 hours. You might think it's boring, but when you consider that it's only 3 hours, wow, that's so much information, so much thought, so much messages, so much beauty, so much um, lessons about life, about growing up, about family dynamics, about people, culture, politics, society, all in 3 hours of film. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what I wanted to say. Um, and yeah, I think this really is one of the best films I've ever seen. And if you haven't seen it, don't watch this video, just go watch it. And then if you want to hear my thoughts, come back. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video.